Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of the Not Your Average Investor Show. We are talking about the state of construction in 2024. We're talking about where prices are. We're talking about where permitting is. We're talking about the ability to create impact through a vertically integrated company that takes construction real seriously by bringing on some really, really great teammates. And we're joined by none other than, what do they call you? Chief Construction Man? Is that what they call you? William.
That guy.
That guy.
Yeah.
He is returning to the show today. He is sneaky funny. He has a name that could be everything from like a Heisman quarterback name to like an 80s bad guy name. Like, you know, I could see like the gym teacher yelling, Burgsteiner. His name, Big Willie style, William Burgsteiner. Welcome to the show, bud.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me back. Can't believe you let me back on.
I'm just glad you made it through the whole Nick Saban retirement thing. I was really worried for you there for a little while.
You know what? As far as I'm concerned, he can do whatever he chooses.
I agree. I agree with the idea of giving people free will and letting them exercise. Good to have you back, man. We have our community in full effect, already checking in here. Do you remember how we start the show normally? Do you remember the little tradition that we have?
Yeah, a lot of excitement, a lot of action, a lot of movement.
Yeah. What do you know what it's called?
I don't remember.
It's called the roll call, William. Let's go.
Call.
We got the MVP leadership kicking us off today. We got the Maven from the mountains of Colorado, Leslie Wilson. We got Christopher Lee from Fernandina Beach checking in. We got Mama Bear, Cody Adams, in the studio with us per the usual. We got the ringmaster, Drew Barnhill, in the house. We got Pamela Myers, always a good vibe from the Seattle area. We got the legend, the man who has a hockey arena named after him, the number one referral source for JWB, Roger Voicena. Did you know that? He's got an arena named after him.
Very cool.
No joke, son. We got Leo Farraganat. We got our regulars, Rosalind and Gary Riley from Marietta, California. We regard you. We got Reggie Fonse from the Inland Empire on the East Coast currently. Reggie, welcome to the humid coast. We got Big Papa in the house. You know who Big Papa is? He's the co-founder of the co-founder.
The co-founder of
Jay Cohen.
Big Jay?
Yeah, we love it when he calls in Big Papa. Good to have you. We got the shaman of the Not Your Average Investor Show community, Nadeem Shah from the West Coast. Who else we got in here checking in? We got the early bird. A little late today, Dean, for the early bird.
Yeah.
But, you know, no big deal. Good to have you, Dean. Back in the house, Marty Quinn from Golden, Colorado, and our growing Colorado community. Eric Killo from Minnesota. We got a growing group of people.
Yeah, we're hitting all corners here, aren't we?
Yeah, well, Minnesota just keeps popping up. It's like I keep meeting people from Minnesota. I don't know what it means. It's got to mean something. We got Sir Jeff Bolton. Good to have you, Jeff. Jonathan Lubin from Jack's Beach. The first families in the house. We got the patriarch and matriarch, Ken and Carolyn Moline. We salute you. All right, man. Let's kick this off.
Let's do it.
First of all, first time that you were on the Not Your Average Investor Show. Did it change your life in any way?
I mean, I thought I was going to get a lot more recognition, like people around the office would recognize who I am, but you know, guess you spend that much time out in the field.
It's life-changing humility.
Fair enough. I'm kind of wondering though, like at this point, this is my second go around. What do I got to do to get like some Not Your Average Investor swag? Right? T-shirt. I see you got a sticker on the computer. Like
we can get you.
What's a guy got to do to get some swag up in here, man?
I can get you. Look at this. Look at this. Live in screen right now. Stickers.
Are we just making it rain?
We got stickers.
Making it rain, baby.
Yeah. Now you can use that. You're definitely not average, William. I can tell you that right now. Sophia Tat is asking, do you send recording out as I have to drop at 12:45 for work call? Absolutely, Sophia. Right now we are live on YouTube, so you can always see it live on YouTube. Next week we publish it, post-edited on YouTube. It also goes live on our podcast next week. So there is plenty of ways to watch this stuff if you follow the JWB YouTube channel and or look up the Not Your Average Investor Show on whatever podcast you like. So happy to do that. Sophia, welcome to the show. Venus DYK Dyke, I would say that is. Good to have you, Venus. Anybody else checking in? All right, let's kick this off, man. State of construction 2024. William, the first thing that I would like to just talk about is, for those of us that didn't join us on the first time that you were here, highly, highly reviewed first time that you were here, critically acclaimed. Can you just give us kind kind of like an overview of the JWB construction department and what it does and kind of like your role in it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say JWB Construction, we kind of have two buckets, if you will, right? You have Jim Marshall, our director of construction, who oversees everything construction wise. But those two buckets, you have new construction and renovations, right? So new construction, basically, we buy a piece of land, we determine what we're going to build on it, and we hand it over to one of our two builder partners. From there, we're managing the relationship with the builder, managing the project itself, not necessarily with the subs, but more so managing the relationship between our team and the superintendents of our builder partners, making sure that the projects stay on track. If any type of, unforeseen circumstances, additional approvals needed, what have you, really making sure that from start to finish, we make it as smooth as possible. And then on the other side of that, we have our renovations department and really kind of three subcategories of that. You have property turns, which is going to be the most volume that we're going to do renovation-wise. We'll do about 1,200 property turns this year. More or less, somebody's been living in the house for a period of time. Could be, a month, could be 5 years. Who knows? I mean, we've done property turns for some people that have been living there for 10 years, right? Yep. That's going to be the most volume that we're going to do on an annual basis.
Volume as in amount of projects started and ended, right?
Correct.
Also spending money volume? Or
I would say definitely volume project wise. Our average budget's around about $4,100, and that's everything from, hey man, I walk up and I put a sign in the yard and a lockbox, and we're on our way. We don't have to do anything. And that could be on the other end of the spectrum doing a full renovation, just depending on how long somebody's been living in there. So, but definitely on a per project basis, the most we're going to do. We do renovations, both turnkey renovations for JWB, as well as renovations for our clients that are, looking for our expertise and our purchasing power to get a quality product there.
Got it. Just to clarify that is when you're saying that you're doing it for turnkey, it means renovating a home before selling it to an investor so that it's already an operating asset. That's the turnkey renovation.
Yep.
And then the other side of the renovation is if you have purchased a turnkey property through JWB, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years later, it needs a new roof or needs something like that, you're able to handle that, as well as folks that bring over property management.
Yeah, absolutely. More along the lines renovation-wise of more of a non-JWB product. So somebody's maybe owned the property for a period of time. They've been managing it themselves. Maybe they had another property manager. They've brought it to us for management, and it needs a renovation. But to your point, house within usually a property turn or a maintenance work order, we handle all the big stuff. If it needs a new roof, some of those capital expenditures. And then that last bucket, if you will, of renovations, we have our construction services department. Really think about that kind of as an extension of our property management maintenance team to where, resident calls in and we've got some type of issue in the home that's just outside of the realm of what somebody, sitting in the office behind a desk, answering the phone, can be expected to manage, right? Whether it be that there's multiple trades and multiple vendors involved, whether it be, hey, roofers are saying that it's a leak in the ductwork and the AC guys are saying it's a roof leak. What is it, right? So something that needs active project management, needs the experience of the construction team to come in and kind of diagnose and pinpoint what the actual issue is there, right? So really, like I said, the overall structure, you've got those two main buckets, so new construction, renovations.
Construction, renovations. Inside of renovation is the renovate before you give it to an investor side. There's an ongoing issue and it's going to require multiple trades. So now you need an actual construction manager, not just a property manager to deal with it. And then there's also the most often one when you're managing 6,000 properties, there's going to be a certain amount of turns every single year. And that varies in scope and dollar amount, but it is the thing that you do most in quantity as far as name of project, right?
Definitely.
And anybody that wants to kind of get like a deeper understanding on those different things and how William's department deals with it, go back to his original episode. Cody, I don't know if maybe you can look up his original episode. I should have had it handy, so that's my bad. But Cody will share it in the chat if anybody wants to go back and see that. Because now that we're like double tapping back into that, right? I remember you going into detail of it was right when you said when you need more than one trade involved,
right?
What you do, and just how valuable that is, right? Because there is I know that the team here takes like great pride in how much they save on maintenance based on phone calls that come in and being able to talk a resident through like, oh, all you got to do is this instead of having to call in work orders. But the other side of that equation is hey, if it isn't just like a send this one guy out to fix it,
Yeah.
and now there's been a couple, at bats here and it hasn't fixed it, you need a adult in the room in the construction trades that
Well, and I'll
that
say
coordinate
a
things.
huge shout out to our maintenance department in the TMM presentation this morning.
Yeah.
Our maintenance department gave a presentation, and it was a staggering number. It was either 750 or $775,000 that they have saved by troubleshooting a maintenance item over that initial phone call with the resident. We don't have to open the work order. We don't have to send somebody out. So that's an astonishing number.
It is a number. I know that we've announced it every once in a while. Like when those numbers roll in, Greg like brings it to the show. And yeah, the idea that you can save people tens, potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars based on, hey, this is something that we can resolve over the phone, crack that, bring that, that is value to everybody involved. Right. Absolutely. But speaking of numbers, I think the number that we've thrown around here in the past, and maybe you can correct me, but it's essentially that JWB spends about $7 million a month in construction costs, something like that. Is that something you're familiar with?
Not entirely, but I wouldn't be shocked.
Okay.
Right? I wouldn't be shocked at all.
Yeah. So
we're anticipating on building close to 400 new houses this year.
Yeah.
Outside of anything that we're doing, renovations wise, property turn wise, just solely new construction, 400 new houses.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're going to talk about the whole construction side of it and, not so much in we're going to get into the details of like infill construction and what that represents. What I'm trying to do right now is just give everybody a breath of we're reporting on some numbers because JWB has large purchasing power. Yep. It works with a big amount of the construction market here in Jacksonville, right? By number and by amount of money spent and like, economic driving, cutting out checks and whatnot. So you have really good insights into essentially the climate here and what's happening with costs and what's happening with permitting and stuff like that. So the first thing that I would love to talk about is you just mentioned that average kind of like turn dollar amount per project is somewhere around 4,000.
Yeah, about $4,100.
Yeah, 4,100. And I feel like that's the same number I was talking about 4 years ago when we started this show.
Yeah.
But that in juxtaposition to the idea that I keep hearing that construction costs have gone up and inflation is going crazy. I mean, am I hearing that correctly? Has it been that steady for that long?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think really what that comes down to from a turns perspective has to do with the amount of volume that we're doing, right? The amount of volume that we're doing, the relationships that we've built with our vendor base. We talked last time I was on the show of, we don't really treat it as a vendor, if you will. We treat it as a partnership, to where I'm looking out for you, you're looking out for me. We've got each other's best interests in mind. So it comes down to the relationships there, the purchasing power. We explore a lot of different avenues to make sure that we have product availability, which is a big part of that. We're not having to constantly search for new products, if you will. And when I say new products, we're always looking for the next big thing, if you will, that could make a difference for us. But when I say new products, I'm not necessarily always having to constantly switch a flooring product or constantly having to switch a paint product. Yeah. So that definitely helps with the predictability and the pricing of it.
Okay. So before we jump too deep into that, because I think I can nerd out on all that you said, what have construction prices in general done over the past couple of years? Do you have a sense of, even though you're getting these like better terms, better purchasing, better availability, do you get a sense of what prices have done either year over year or in a past like certain amount of time?
Yeah, I mean, as far as new construction goes, we're still looking at a lot of like surcharges on lumber packages and things of that nature, I should say, that, who knows when that's going to change. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, across the board, you've certainly seen increases just in materials, doors, windows, especially. Windows has been a big thing for us. It's harder to find windows. It's harder to find a good price point on windows. But yeah, materials across the board, just in general. Year over year, man, it's just the nature of inflation.
What about labor prices? Has there been anything to this idea of there's a labor shortage, right? Like you keep hearing that there's labor shortages. Yeah. You heard a lot of smoke about kind of like these ordinance of, passed around like immigration and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Do you guys get a sense that there's less labor out there that you're fighting for?
It really hasn't been too much of an issue for us, and I think it all comes back to the volume that we're doing, right? One of the biggest benefits, with working with JWB is that we're always going to have that next property turn, right? We're always going to have that next renovation. So, whereas we see prices go up when it comes to, a pass through on material costs, for the most part, the labor has stayed the same because our vendors know that they can count on us to provide them with constant, steady work.
Yeah. And you're saying the advantage of working with JWB from the subcontractor contractor level, and that is you provide steady work, you treat them as partners, so you're not constantly beating them up like a lot of construction managers do.
Yeah.
That then translates to this idea of working with JWB as an investor in the sense that I get passed through this preferential treatment when I need something. I have availability of materials and labor. You get this preferential pricing because you're able to buy in bulk and you're able to secure those contracts and you can negotiate that. So at the end of the day, for an investor like myself, it leads to shorter timelines of disruption for our residents, which means longer resident stays and lower maintenance costs and renovation costs when I, as an investor, decide to upgrade the property.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're trying to always reduce maintenance as much as we can by using durable products. Coming back to availability of products, one thing that we always try to focus on when it comes to a property turn is, not only making sure that we're spending money in the right areas, it's just as important as to where we spend money as to where we don't spend money, but also being really cognizant of the timelines there. Even though it's not a dollar figure that we can necessarily put an actual dollar figure on, the longer that property sits vacant and it's not cash flowing from that investor, that's real dollars. So we've taken a lot of steps over the last couple of years to shorten that timeline. Looking at our, last 4 quarters, 12 months worth of performance, I mean, we're at about 9.5 days. To get possession of a property, get it turned around, get it back on the market for you so we can get a renter in there.
So 9.5 days from resident leaves, whatever amount of scope needs to get done is done, and now it's ready for showings. It's ready. It's move-in ready, essentially.
Absolutely.
Which, at the end of the day, that completely shortens up the lifespan of a vacancy, right?
Absolutely.
That's huge, man. That's 9.5 days. Given that the average resident stay is like 4.5 years, the idea that in 9.5 days you can erase 4.5 years of wear and tear seems pretty incredible, man. That's cool. We have a good question here from Mike Foster. We are talking about this idea of longer resident stays and what that takes. And he's asking, do you find that the cost of turnover renovations increase roughly proportionately to the amount of time residents have lived in a home?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
You find a lot of times that somebody, if they've been living in the house for 6, 7, 8 years, they want to live there because it's a clean, safe, livable home, and they've taken really good care of it. Right. So I wouldn't say those are necessarily correlated.
Cool. Sounds good, man. So just to kind of recap where we started, us like materials, prices, and costs. A couple of years ago, giant wood lumber shortage, right? You're saying that lumber is still at a bit of a premium. That's still kind of happening. You also reference other exterior, kind of like openings. It's kind of like what you're talking about, right? Like it's like windows and doors.
Yeah, windows has been a big thing for us. I mean, when we were kind of at the height of that shortage with COVID, I mean, it was taking us anywhere between 10 to 12 weeks to get windows in.
Is that nationwide or is that just like Florida because of like hurricane code and stuff like that?
To be honest with you, I'm not really sure.
I
mean, our timeline has shortened considerably since then.
Yeah.
But it's, you're still waiting a little while.
Cool. So the extended timelines have come down, but they're still slightly elevated than like whatever the dream days were.
Right. Exactly.
build.
Yeah.
Cool. Interesting.
Yeah.
Sir Jeff Bolton says, for those with properties outside JWB, can JWB share the products they are using so we can benefit from the big data on how those materials hold up over time? When you think about this like durability of materials, what comes to mind for you?
Big one that comes to mind is paint.
Yeah.
So we use Sherwin-Williams paint. We've used a couple of different paint products over the years, but we use a Sherwin-Williams satin finish paint. The idea there is that satin finish, it makes it easy to clean, right? So if I go in there and I do a property turn, that doesn't necessarily mean that I have to go in and paint the entire interior of the home, right? There are opportunities for us to go in and touch up walls, or maybe, clean the walls because it has that cleanability factor with the satin finish.
Okay.
So there's a lot of variables in it. It's not necessarily the individual product.
Yeah.
It's not just Sherwin-Williams paint. It's that we're using a satin finish paint.
Satin finish. I'm sure that your drywall guy is real good at like fixing blemishes, so you can just kind of paint over it and it doesn't.
Exactly.
That makes a big deal, right?
Absolutely.
What about, I know that we've talked a lot about picking durable materials in the sense of like, we want surfaces that are easy to clean, simple to replace, and easy to maintain. Anything come to mind as far as like materials that that are built into that? Like, is it?
Yeah. We're using a carpet product right now, which is pretty cool. The way the carpet's manufactured, you can actually dump a gallon of bleach on it and it's not going to change color.
Okay.
Right. So there's a durability factor there. If I can get through a couple of property turns, being able to go in, steam clean the carpets, kind of revive them, if you will.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be paying constantly to replace carpet, whether it's bedrooms, living areas, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
If I can get 2 or 3 cycles out of it because of the durability factor there, that's a win.
Interesting. Do you know what the name of that product is?
It's an engineered floors product. I can't remember off the top of my head what the actual product itself is called.
Cool. Something to look for there, Jeff. Michael Santoris. William, can you explain how JWB came up with the reasoning on no dishwashers? I'm not sure if that's part of your.
You do. That's a good question.
Okay,
that's
cool.
a good question.
I didn't know about this.
And honestly, it comes down to maintenance.
Yeah.
Right. It's one thing that we determined that if we can eliminate that, it's going to eliminate potential maintenance down the road. If somebody shoves something down a garbage disposal or gets something in a dishwasher, if your dishwasher breaks, you got to replace the appliance. You've got plumbing involved. If you've got a leak, maybe you've got drywall involved. So think of it kind of as it's not just a dishwasher issue. If something comes up, it can be a compounded issue with several other things that also have to be repaired.
When did that take effect? Is that something that's been there for a while?
As long as I can remember.
Okay, interesting. All right, I had no idea. Okay, cool. All right, so we talked about costs. We talked about materials. Another thing that got really heated was timelines and permitting and stuff like that. How is that doing these days in Jacksonville?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what type of permit you're trying to get.
Yeah.
Right. If I'm going in and submitting a building permit that's got framing and engineering, that could take anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks. And that's, you got to get in touch with an engineer. You got to get those drawings back. You got to get them to the city, get them approved. I think the days of just being able to walk in and slap something on the desk and get a stamp on it are probably gone there. But I will say, the city's taken a lot of strides. They've completely revamped the permitting website with the new Jax Epics website, which is going really well. So there's a lot of effort and there's a lot of focus on it, down at the city. And who knows, maybe we'll see some increases in timeline there.
So
decreases, I should say.
Decreases, yeah. So city is investing in technology, making it more user-friendly. That's good to hear. Probably more clarity.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a little more user-friendly.
Yeah, that's huge. What about, we talk a lot about supply and demand out here, right? So, I mean, inevitably, the city can invest in all the great technology. At the end of the day, if there are still people knocking on their doors to build houses, it's going to be a backlog for them, but it's good for investors. How do you get the sense of like construction activity, permits being pulled, things like that, and that kind of backlog?
I tell you, I mean, it's like you drive through the city. I said in our last podcast that I was on, is like our office is the city of Jacksonville, right?
Yeah, sure.
We're driving everywhere, and the amount of construction that you see with JWB and non-JWB, I mean, Jacksonville's the place to be. I can't stress enough how much activity you see around in all of our neighborhoods.
It's really interesting to see it, right? Because I don't drive nearly as much. I just see I'm always looking for headlines and looking for interesting things. So I don't know if you saw that we got rated the #2 job market by the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah.
Stuff like that to me is really, really telling. I think it's different in Jacksonville, what you see happening, because it's so spread out.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
There's so much space to fill into. So construction is still pretty horizontal. Whereas I'm used to kind of like when we were going through this type of boom in Miami, it was just like crane. Right. Yeah. You don't see as many cranes, but you still just get this sense of infrastructure improvements are happening all over the place. You're driving past any kind of neighborhood, there's something being built. When you're driving past that main strip in like Atlantic Boulevard that I take to go home, it's always like, all right, they just clear cut this area because a whole new development is coming in everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. And does that present a different obstacle for you guys? Like, have you had to adjust your timelines on what you think permitting is going to happen these days versus kind of where you were a few years ago?
No, it just kind of is what it is, right? You just got to kind of flex where you have to flex.
Do you not need permit for a lot of these turns? Like, how do you do that in 9 days?
Yeah, I mean, most of the stuff we're doing on turns is more cosmetic.
It's cosmetic.
More so than, I got to go in and reframe half the house or something along those lines. If I'm just going in, I'm pressure washing the house, I'm cleaning, I'm painting, maybe I'm putting some new flooring in, all things that are not going to need a permit.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's probably an uneducated question by me. But so Nadeem Shaw says, question, at the time of a turn, why not do vinyl flooring instead of that carpet that you just mentioned? Doesn't vinyl flooring last longer than carpet?
The answer is yes. The way that we approach it is if we're doing a renovation, like a turnkey renovation, so a home that JWB has purchased, renovating to our standard that we're going to sell to one of our investors, we're going to put that hard surface flooring in. The idea is, yes, it's going to be more durable. There's going to be more longevity there, but we're footing the bill for that.
Yeah.
Right. We're putting that in. Whereas on a property turn, we're trying to be cognizant of your money.
Yep.
Right? We understand that every dollar that we spend is affecting the return on the investment. So when I look at the price of carpet installed versus the price of the vinyl plank flooring, well, the carpet is about a third of the price, right? So realistically, if I install carpet, I could go through 3 property turns, replacing the carpet every single time before I get to that break-even cost on the vinyl plank. So if I go in there at a 3-year lease term and then do my property turn, that's essentially 9 or 10 years that it's going to take for you to even break even.
Yeah,
get into that price point for the vinyl plank.
So that sounds to me that you have your standard that you built for where, because JWB is vertically integrated, beyond just a regular turnkey company, you're doing all that stuff, giving somebody an operating asset, you foot that bill, what you put into that. At that point, when you're doing it, you do vinyl flooring. When someone has an existing property that is already performing and they either come to JWB for property management or, whatever other scenario can be, and it's the investor's time to make a decision, you're able to present multiple options.
Exactly.
And you found a carpet that is a really, really good option
for
those of us.
I mean, we're gonna always leave that decision in your hands, right? We kind of look at it as, hey, like, what would we do if it was us? What's our standard? But we know that, that's not what makes the most sense for everybody. So we give you both of those options.
Cool. That's awesome. I mean, as you were talking about this, the construction services, I don't know if you know this, but I had the 3 properties that I purchased through JWB. And then in January, I bought a duplex that I moved into one, and I'm having JWB property manage the other one. I know that duplex within the next 5 years is going to need a new roof,
right,
and is going to need like AC and stuff like that. That's the type of stuff that y'all would be able to coordinate for me.
Absolutely.
As a property manager,
absolutely.
Right? What does that look like for me? Am I hiring you kind of like with a standard GC fee, or what's that look like?
Yeah, so for our turnkey properties, properties we've renovated, sold to our investors, there's no type of management fee involved for anything on occupied maintenance. We do have a management fee on the property turn. It's at 10%, which is capped up to a certain amount. For properties that are not ours, you've brought that to us for property management services. There is a management fee that's attached to that if we're doing a construction project or a construction services ticket where the construction team is getting involved.
Got it. So management fee attached to that, but I still get to tap into the purchasing power.
Exactly.
And the
timeline. You're tapping into our network.
I'm tapping into the network, right? Absolutely. Super valuable.
Yeah.
I thought of that with the carpet thing because I know that we have more. Me as a green building guy, like I'm not a big fan of carpet, but we have a ton of carpet in those units.
Right.
But I'm also cost sensitive, right? So
we're strategic about where we're putting the carpet, right?
Yeah.
We may put carpet in bedrooms, but maybe we're not going to put it in the living room because it's a high traffic area. It's going to get a lot of foot traffic.
Yeah.
We're not going to put it in a kitchen, right?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Venus Dyke has a question. Venus, let me know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. What's the average rehab cost per square foot in Jacksonville right now? Do you have that number?
I don't.
You don't have that off the top of your head? All right, cool.
I don't.
Okay. Mike Foster, I was recently notified by my portfolio manager that one of my homes has flooring that has warped and come loose due to Florida humidity loosening the glue. This is a home built in 2022. Wow. Is there a better flooring product available that can better withstand Florida humidity?
Yes. And we've already made that change. We're in the process of making that change, moving from a glue down plank to a floating click lock product.
Okay, from glue down plank, so meaning there's an adhesive and you put it on, to floating click lock, I assume is like a puzzle piece?
Yeah, it's like a tongue and groove, if you will.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, he makes a really good point. I mean, humidity is a real thing in Florida.
Yeah.
You know, especially in a lot of older homes.
Yeah.
You don't see it as much in a newer build, but it's, you know, obviously not out of the realm of possibility. But to answer the question, yes, it's something that we have identified, and we're making that shift to that different product.
Good answer. Good answer. Mike, I hope you're happy with that. Okay, so we've talked about timelines. We've talked about supply. We've talked about costs. Let's talk staffing levels.
Sure.
As the JWB construction department, from like a head count, have they grown year over year?
Yeah, absolutely. We've recently brought on 2 new superintendents on our property turn team. Okay. Again, just purely based on the amount of volume that we're doing. We've also brought in a new superintendent for our construction services division. Okay. Again, just purely based on volume. Not to say that means there's a lot of fires that have to be put out, but you know, with 6,000, close to 6,000 properties, there's always going to be something that's happening. You know, one of the really cool things that we did is we really kind of took each level, like we took a property turn and we kind of took it apart and built it back up and said, okay, how long does it take to complete each activity and be successful in running a property turn, right? And we more or less built a staffing calculator out of that. So now year over year, once we get our projections as to how many property turns we're going to do for the year, all we have to do is go in, change that number, and it's going to tell me exactly how many superintendents we need to continue to perform at that operational excellence level.
Interesting. As you're saying that, I'm thinking, okay, so the speed to turn isn't just a buying power thing. It's not just like a great, relationship with your subcontractors. It's also kind of parallel to everything else I see here. It's really good planning, forecasting.
Making sure we're staffed appropriately.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's really, really interesting. So you guys broke down every piece of a typical turn and then timed it out.
We broke it all the way down to how long does it take to peel the number off and slap it on the sign.
Wow. Wow. Interesting. That's super cool. Is that fun for you?
But it's a necessary evil.
That's necessary.
Yeah.
Fun is being able to say we're done with this in 9 days.
Exactly.
That's
the reward.
I appreciate the honesty. Speaking of things that JWB is really good at as far as planning and stuff like that, they're really good at innovating, right? And we were talking about this idea that y'all have now been around long enough. We're starting to really see the impacts of the things that you're doing shine through. You were telling me like a really interesting story about when you kind of first started. You want to tell me a little bit about that?
I mean, we've got, I don't know if we're going to get into the pictures or not. But,
we can. Is this time for the pictures?
Sure. Why not?
All right, go for it.
We've got kind of one of these core neighborhoods that we invest in, the Oakwood Villas neighborhood. And I remember probably 6 or 7 years ago when I first came onto the team and I was working in our acquisitions department. And my first or second week, we got up there and said, oh, hey, we closed on, it was like 170 lots this week. And I'm thinking to myself, what have I gotten myself into? Where are we going with this, right? And you go into this neighborhood, and a lot of the lots that we had purchased had, older mobile homes on them that had just been run down, abandoned, were in total disarray. And they kind of looked at me and said, okay, here's your first project. Find out how we're going to get rid of all of these mobile homes. And we don't want to pay anything to do it, right? So we had to get really creative there. Instead of paying $4,000 or $5,000 a pop to get them demoed and hauled off, we kind of went out there and put ourselves out there, and we actually found some scrappers that were interested in going, and they would haul them off for free so they could tear them down and take them to the scrap yard and sell it for whatever it's worth, I guess. But you look at this neighborhood now, and it kind of speaks for itself. It really does.
Yeah. Kind of speaks for itself. So going from that empty lots with old dilapidated structures on it to brand new homes and good things coming. Is this another one that was kind of like that? This dandy?
Yeah, these are all in the same neighborhood.
All in the same neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
So this is talking about this idea of being able to take a underutilized asset, which was the land in Jacksonville, have these like I know as somebody that's been in neighborhoods that start to get restored or activated or
Yeah.
whatever, these empty lots are generally places where trash piles up, where you can do shady things. Like I remember when I was living in Wynwood before it started really getting super vertical in Miami, it went from a period of we had little homes and it was like a little neighborhood. It was a mixed neighborhood of kind of like socioeconomic demographics. I was kind of like on the first wave of like people moving into it. And that felt one way. But then there was a moment where a bunch of developers just started acquiring lots and tearing stuff down before they could consolidate everything and start building upwards. And it was during that time where it got the most dangerous because it was like you're walking past really dark areas that don't have anything there and people were using it for whatever they want to use it, right? So like I would assume that in these neighborhoods that JWB has gone in and cleared out old structures and dilapidated things and started putting in homes, that kind of just takes away the opportunity for trash to build up, for people to plan stuff that isn't really above board and just makes it a much more livable area for everybody that's already there.
Really, I mean, for me, I'm a Jacksonville native. There's not a lot of us in the office that are Jacksonville natives, but for me, we talk about driving around these neighborhoods, and it's really a source of pride.
Yeah.
To see neighborhoods being transformed really one house at a time, one lot at a time.
Yeah.
And, for the city, I call it the triple win, right?
Yeah.
For the city, it's great for the city. We're going in, we're maybe tearing down a house that's been got all kinds of rolling fines and liens on it and building a new home to get a performing asset back on the tax roll for our investors. It's a great opportunity for them, to tap into the Jacksonville market. For the surrounding neighborhoods, property values are going up. So it's really a win all the way around, but it's definitely a point of pride.
I could see it being this, having come back from Lee's mentioning, I was just at this real estate investor event in California, and it's, the more time I spend here, right? I've spent a lot of time in these walls understanding what JWB does. And like as time goes on, I'm starting to get to spend some time outside of these walls and understanding what the difference is, right? Like understanding how spoiled we are. But I would imagine that the turnkey stuff that I was seeing over there felt like they were building subdivisions in certain places, like where they were building out whole new neighborhoods. And what I've realized is that it's truly unique that JWB has figured out how to put new homes inside these infill lots. And as I hear you talking about this triple win effect, I think of the idea that, connecting these neighborhoods to each other to eliminate those blank spaces is a win that another way of developing this thing wouldn't be doing it, right? It would just be moving people from one place to another instead of connecting them. For the city, not having to run all new services to another area versus start to get economies of scale within certain areas is another win. For investors, investing in things that are already there and already proven, right? Like it's already a functioning neighborhood. Right. So it has existing demand. You don't have to create new demand for people to do this. You get to tap into the existing population. That feels like risk mitigation from the standpoint of not having to go clear cut a whole bunch of trees to put in a multifamily development. That makes me feel good from an environmental standpoint. And it's no surprise to me that that's kind of the thing that JWB first signed it on the front page of the Wall Street Journal for, is like unlocking this idea of building infill lots. As a builder, why is that so much more difficult, right? Like, why hasn't everybody else just figured that piece out?
It's definitely its own beast, if you will. It's a lot of different challenges, space constraints. Neighbors aren't always super happy when you've got framers and roofers all around making noise at all hours of the day. More construction crimes, if you will, right? Yep. You got a lot more activity in the neighborhood. You've got materials sitting out there that could much easier for them to disappear, But I would say the biggest things are the space constraints.
Yeah, just getting,
you don't have a lot
machinery in and out, staging.
Staging, I would say staging is a big thing. If I got a truss package that's being delivered and nowhere to put it, that's a problem.
That's a problem. Yeah. When you think about in in the neighborhoods that we live in, and like you see these homes getting built all the way to the property line with a little bit of yard, like having to do that inside these neighborhoods that are already, like there and functioning and like staging and getting that stuff done, dealing with noise complaints, dealing with all that other stuff. It's its own beast, man. I think it's super, super impressive that you guys have unlocked it. So we went over the before and after pictures. We talked about this like value of info lots. We got a couple of questions here.
Sure.
Lee Bishop, he's the MVP. You may have heard of him. Lee asks, William, how close does your team work with the portfolio managers in getting the tip off of turns coming in a month? And does this go hand in hand with pre-ordering basic materials for the turn?
It's a good question. So we do have a calendar to where we can see a week out, 2 weeks out, kind of what possessions are on the calendar. So we have a pretty good idea as to what's coming. As far as our interaction with the portfolio managers, very, very close, right? We're going out there, we're writing those scopes, we're sending them in, they're going directly to the portfolio managers, but we're also in contact with them to say, hey, I noticed this out here. Right. Let's talk about this. Let's make sure that we're on the same page so we understand what's going on. Same idea if we're recommending carpet or plank to say, hey, look, here's some notes. I'm recommending this. You could also do this, making sure that we have all the options out on the table. They're coming to us with questions all the time. I mean, I can remember when I was doing property turns and you would field anywhere between 20 to 25 phone calls a day just from the office, having communication about the scopes and kind of what's going on there.
So 20 to 25 phone calls a day just from the office, meaning you're getting 20 to 25 phone calls a day from our our portfolio manager to keep the investor apprised of like what we're doing and what's going on.
Absolutely. As far as ordering materials, I mean, that's kind of the beauty of what we do, scaling it. We're using the same materials in every house, the same flooring, the same carpet, the same plumbing fixtures, the same paint product. So our vendors and our suppliers know that we are constantly doing projects, so they're always going to have it in stock for us. So there's not necessarily a need to pre-order. If we go in and we send one of our generals, say, hey, here's a new property turn, you're going to paint the interior of this house. 9 times out of 10, they can call Sherwin-Williams, pop in there in the next couple of hours, and the paint will be ready for them.
There is a handful of inherent scale advantages of what you just described, right? Like we always talk about this like data flywheel and how JWB, everything is like a flywheel that builds onto itself. What you just described of not having to worry about ordering materials gets solved by multiple things happening at the same time. One is the widgetization of the real estate asset, right? Like you use the same materials over and over again. You know how to renovate, you know how to maintain, you know how to build these homes all with as few SKUs as possible. 2 is the long-term relationship that you have with your vendors. You really vet them, you build a relationship, you keep them. And you give them a lot of work every single month. So now they are able to count on the fact of, okay, since I have this, I want to say guaranteed work, but since I have this easy to prognosticate work, as long as nothing goes wrong here, they're able to manage their own side better. That leads to shorter lead times for you.
Absolutely.
Because you are building out these relationships with these subcontractors. They're storing that because of the trust that's there. You don't have to carry the storage costs and things of that sort. And it's all of these things working in concert that lead to these amazing metrics that you're able to report on. I just thought that was
absolutely
great part there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. I like that a lot. Okay. So Venus has another question. What neighborhoods, zip codes in Jacksonville are you mostly invested in? Is that something that you are pretty familiar with?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, we invest in every zip code.
Yeah.
Right. We're everywhere.
Yeah.
All the way up past the airport, Yulee, all the way down to St. Augustine, the beaches.
You guys service every zip code.
Right.
Right. I guess most of the investment that JWB is actually buying into is kind of like those like 4 neighborhoods around the urban core, right?
Yeah, I would say your four main neighborhoods, if you will, Arlington Beaches, North Side, West Side, South Side.
Yeah. A
lot of emphasis in, you mentioned certain zip codes. 32211 is a big one. We just saw the pictures there of the new construction homes over 32211 in the Arlington area.
Yeah.
So
11, I've heard like 08, 09.
08, 09, 54, 06, 05, 10. Yeah.
Sounds like that Ludacrous song when he's like,
Right.
talk about the different area codes. Roger Evans has a question. I came in late to the show, but just curious, how many builders does JWB use? How do they decide who builds what homes?
We have two main builders that we use.
Two main builders. Okay.
We have American Classic Homes, who we've been partners with for a long time, probably 10 years plus. And we have Flight Builders, which is a new builder that we've partnered with just in the past year or so.
Cool. Right on. Do you know the decision-making criteria is basically hold into the high standards that, can be delivered?
Yeah. I mean, American Classic, they're handling the bulk volume just as how large of an operation that they are. So a lot of it just depends on the volume that each builder has.
Cool. Sweet. The Ringmaster, Drew Barnhill, asks, has JWB ever entertained putting duplexes on these lots? I know that you're not in the new construction department, but do you know anything about the decision-making criteria of that type of stuff?
Yeah. I mean, when I was working in acquisitions, a lot of times we looked at it as to, okay, first off, what size is the lot, right? What floor plan do we have in our arsenal that's even going to fit on the lot?
Yeah.
Right. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah. Because you guys have certain floor plans. Like you basically have repeatable floor plans. Exactly. The same way that a tract builder has like 4 different things that they build in like one neighborhood. You guys do that, but you put it in, you fit it into different existing conditions.
Yeah, right? Exactly. So that's the biggest thing is like, what can I even build here that's going to work?
Yeah.
The way that it's zoned, how big is the lot? We look at it, really breaking it down as an investment. What can it be rented for? What can we sell it for? What does that return look like for the potential investor? So yeah, I mean, we're always looking at what makes the most sense for the individual lot in the individual neighborhood. We build a lot of townhomes, so duplexes certainly aren't out of the question. Cool. It's all just about the lot in the area.
There you go. Hope you like that, Ringmaster. BJ McKay, our dude BJ, says, are JWB new builds kitchens equipped with dishwasher, and what flooring goes into new builds? Do you know that?
So we're not installing dishwashers unless it's one that we've kind of earmarked that we're going to sell retail. We do sell some homes retail. We don't sell all of our homes to investors. We do sell them to our occupants. So if we're going to sell it retail, usually, not all the time, usually they're going to have a dishwasher in there. The answer about the flooring, again, we've been using that glue down plank product, and we're in the process of transitioning to that floating click lock plank.
Got it. Sweet. Sir Jeff Bolton says, I noticed in the latest turn a mix of screw in and ball valves for the sink, toilet, etc. shutoffs. Is that mix planned for based on availability? I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're asking.
I noticed in the latest turn a mix of screw in and ball valves for the sink, toilet, etc. shutoffs. Is that mix planned for based on availability? So is he saying that the valve?
Yeah, if we're talking about maybe like a shutoff valve, to a faucet or a toilet, a lot of times, over time, those can just corrode and start leaking. Or maybe we see that it's maybe not leaking, but it's right on the verge of it. We may opt to go ahead and get that done. It's a quick, easy, cheap fix, and it's something that could save a lot of headache down the road when a resident's calling in saying my toilet's leaking and my drywall is wet and moldy and my flooring's peeling up because of a water issue.
Got it. Interesting. Okay, so then the answer is, if they have these shutoff valves, it's because it's happened because an issue has arisen and you've identified an opportunity to put these things in.
Yeah.
Got it. Love it. MVP Lee with a question, trying to put you on the spot here. He tends to do this.
All right.
Feel free to pass. William has this under control. I want to put him on the spot a little. Does he have a go-to crew that he calls out in an event of an emergency? And does he want to give them a shout out here?
Absolutely. Yeah. I've got 2 go-tos. So I guess it also depends on what trade we're talking about.
True.
Right?
True.
But yeah, so like if I need a generalist that I'm going to call in, I'm always calling my boy Nick from Nitro Solutions, right? He was actually part of the maintenance presentation this morning. Nick used to work for JWB.
Right on.
I know that I can trust Nick. I can always trust Chris from CPT.
Yeah.
Right. So again, it all goes back to the relationship building, right? I'm looking out for you. You're looking out for me. I don't have to look at what you're doing under a microscope. Yeah. Adam Eisman always says, inspect what you expect. Right. But I know that I don't have to babysit them. If I've got a plumbing issue, I know I'm going to call Doug and John from Christian Brothers Plumbing. I've got them on speed dial. Right. I spent a half a day out in the field with them last week doing nothing but going around and cameraing drains. Yeah. So you spend time and you build one-on-one relationships and you build that trust.
I love it, man. I love how big a smile you got on your face when you saw the question and how quick you were to answer it, the same way that Leah's saying. Because to me, there's just never been I've always seen the archetype of like the guy that knows a guy being super, super valuable.
Right.
And the idea, and you only become that by building relationships, having a bunch of exposure, like testing and working with different people and building like long levels of trust. And it's just really, really clear that from your position and the way that JWB operates with their service teammates and contractors that they use, that you serve as that as the
I think
construction person.
The amount of time that I've had an opportunity to spend with Jim Marshall, who's our director of construction, and Larry Holland, who's our production manager, they've kind of instilled that in me. They've beaten it into my head to where I dream about it at night. This entire industry, and not just construction, but really real estate as a whole.
Yeah.
It's all about the relationships that you build.
It's all relationships. Couldn't agree more, man. I love it. All right, last couple of questions before we get you out of there. Great questions today from the Q&A. Mike Foster asks, do you see much problem with home mold buildup due to the Florida humidity?
Yeah, you could see that a lot of times in older homes. Maybe they don't have exhaust fans in the bathrooms. Maybe it's an older block home that doesn't have insulation in the walls. So we have a couple of different avenues that we take to mitigate the humidity issues. But yeah, I mean, it's a real thing.
Yeah. You're a construction guy in Florida.
Well, I say welcome to Florida.
Yeah. Right? You're a humidity pro, right? Yeah. Got it. Just like up north, people are really, really good at keeping heating inside, right? And weatherization on that.
But, one thing that, we obviously take that very seriously and we focus on that. So I actually went out and got a mold certification, to where if somebody's calling in with a mold issue, we have somebody on staff that can go in and look at it and diagnose the issue with, fairly good certainty as to what we need to do to get the issue fixed.
All right. So you got a PhD in mold.
Something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. Last question here. The patron Santorios of the community, Michael Santorios, says, William, when looking at the new home inventory, this might not be in your purview, but I'm going to ask it anyways. At the new home inventory on the JWB property site, past new home construction seemed to be 4-bed, 2-bath, and now they appear to be 3-bed, 2-bath. Am I wrong in this observation?
I'm not sure. I know that we build both.
Yeah. And like you said, it's kind of like, depending on the lot, you have a couple of pitches.
Yeah.
And then depending on the batter, you pick the pitch, right?
Exactly.
Now that, getting your baseball credit back up.
It all comes back.
Since you missed the whole cleanup scenario. Last question for you from me, man. As this operation grows, as you see what's happening in downtown, as you connect the dots here based on the impact that you've made in these kinds of neighborhoods, what are you most looking forward to with this kind of the operation and what you guys are doing in the city and stuff like that, from personal, professional, whatever you got?
I think it's always exciting to see what's going on downtown. Again, as somebody that's lived in Jacksonville their whole lives and kind of seen the ups and downs of downtown, if you will. I think it's really exciting to see the amount of activity and the amount of emphasis. And I think it's going to be great for the city as a whole, but I also think it's going to be a great thing for our investors. Most of those core neighborhoods that we're building and investing in are immediately surrounding that downtown area. So I think that only can bring good things for our investors.
Agreed, man. As I came back from this event in California, I was there, I made a presentation on rental property investing and keeping it passive, right? So it was 5 profit centers. Right. It was the idea that you make most of your wealth with home price appreciation. So you got to be in it for a long time. It was this idea that if that's what you're doing, then order of operations needs to flip and not be just property focused, and then find a team, but find a team first and then property focused. But the conversations that people really got excited about was this idea of, man, this great American city that's had all this great trajectory, and yet downtown hasn't even turned on.
Yeah.
And all the signs that say downtown is turning on in the next 5 years, you're not going to recognize it. We're headed to that Nashville, Charlotte, Austin, Denver kind of status, and people wanting to be a part of it.
Absolutely.
Is really, really exciting. As I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. As an investor, as a resident, I would imagine that being in the belly of the beast, that's really driving this stuff forward. It's got to be super exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, you drive up 95 and you look over and you see, the development in La Villa that just recently finished. Yeah. That's kind of the first thing on the horizon that you see now. Yeah. So it's coming.
It's coming, man. Yeah. It's coming. I got a question in the chat from Jay Currup. Do you proactively evaluate homes for maintenance?
Yes. A lot of times that, when we go in and do a property turn, we're kind of looking and saying, okay, and that kind of comes also full circle back to, the question about how much communication are we having with the portfolio managers, right? Mm-hmm. We'll go out there, we'll write a scope of work and we'll mention something, say, hey, look, your air conditioner here. You're going to make it through one more lease cycle, but you should probably be prepared on the next go around that we're either going to have some major maintenance or a replacement. So we try to prep you up front as much as we can when we see that something's kind of coming down the pipeline, if you will.
Interesting. So you guys are like ahead of the next turn. You're giving investors some insight into expectations, right? Like I feel like kind of like investing in these homes, owning these things for a while, the biggest risk is like surprises, and especially when it comes on the financial side. So you're able to provide some real insight into, hey, we're renewing this time around. This thing doesn't have to happen, but likely at the end of this 2-3 year lease.
I call it a BOLO. Be on the lookout.
BOLO, be on the lookout. I like that. So BOLO reports.
BOLO,
do you ever wear BOLO ties? Is that a thing that you do?
Did we just become millionaires?
And then all right, Susan has one more question. I know that this is not in your purview, but do you have any pull on getting houses that are currently on septic pushed down the city timeline to convert to city sewer?
I wish.
You can make just one call, right?
I wish. I feel your pain, though. I feel your pain.
Yeah. All right, William, man, I super pumped that you joined us again, man.
Thanks for having
me. As usual, totally delivered. As usual, community totally delivered.
Great questions.
Yeah, really good questions on the community, right? Like this thing would have ended half an hour ago if it was just up to me. So, we never take it for granted that you take a full hour out of your day to hang out with us, have these great questions, add to the conversation. We will always take questions, always answer them, and just really, really appreciate it. Next week, we're unveiling something new to the world. We're giving birth out here on the Natural Average Investor. You want to know what's going on?
Enlighten me.
GC and the team have developed a new tool to understand returns and get clarity on portfolio building. And we're doing a Natural Average Investor Show world premiere. We're changing the game.
GC is a numbers guy for sure. So
GC,
he's just cooking them up in the lab now.
GC's spreadsheet game is unbelievable.
Yeah, that's kind of that's a personal goal of mine. Yeah. So like really up my Excel game.
I remember when I was in construction, that was always a personal goal for me, and it was just completely against my constitution. I'm not that guy.
I feel like I've got a pretty strong base layer. Yeah. So we need to start adding some gadgets and gizmos on there.
There you go. Well, we'll see. We'll see if maybe in a year or two you're coming out with brand new groundbreaking analysis tools, and we'll bring you back on.
There you go.
Family, we'll see you next week. And from here till then, William, do you know what the piece of advice we always give everybody?
Don't be average.
Don't be average. See you next week. Thanks, buddy.